Currently, Earth. On July 1st, in 1863, one of the largest military conflicts in North American history initiates. Union and Confederate forces collide at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the epic battle that lasted 3 days and resulted in a retreat to Virginia by Robert E. Lee's Army of North Virginia. 2 months prior to Gettysburg, Lee had dealt a stunning defeat to the Army of the Potomac at Chancellorsville, Virginia. He then made plans for a northern invasion in order to relieve pressure on War River, Virginia, and to seize the initiative from the Yankees. His army, numbering about 80,000, began moving on June 3rd. The Army of the Potomac, commanded by Joseph Hooker and numbering just under 100,000, began moving shortly thereafter, staying between Lee and Washington, D.C. But on June 28th, frustrated by the Lincoln administration's restriction on his autonomy as commander, Hooker resigned and was replaced by George G. Meade. Meade took command of the Army of the Potomac as Lee's army moved into Pennsylvania. On the morning of July 1st, advanced units of the forces came into contact with one another just outside of Gettysburg. The sound of battle attracted other units, and by noon the conflict was raging. During the first hours of battle, Union General John Reynolds continued on into the eternity, and the Yankees found that they were outnumbered. The battle lines ran around the northwestern rim of Gettysburg. The Confederates applied pressure all along the Union front, and they slowly drove the Yankees through the town. By evening, Federal troops rallied on high ground on the southeastern edge of Gettysburg. As more troops arrived, Meade's army formed a 3-mile-long fishhook-shaped line running from Culp's Hill on the right flank along Cemetery Hill and Cemetery Ridge to the base of Little Round Top. The Confederates held Gettysburg and stretched along a 6-mile arc around the Union position. Lee's forces would continue to batter each end of the Union position before launching the infamous Pickett's Charge against the Union center on July 3rd. On July 1st, in 1867, the Autonomous Dominion of Canada, a confederation of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and the future provinces of Ontario and Quebec, is officially recognized by Great Britain with the passage of the Great British North America Act. During the 19th century, colonial dependence gave way to increasing autonomy for a growing Canada. In 1841, Upper and Lower Canada, now known as Ontario and Quebec, were made a single province by the Act of Union. In the 1860s, a movement for a greater Canadian federation grew out of the need for a common defense, the desire for a national railroad system, and the necessity of finding a solution to the problem of French and British conflict. When the maritime provinces, which sought union among themselves, called a conference in 1864, delegates from the other provinces of Canada attended. Later in the year, another conference was held in Quebec, and in 1866, Canadian representatives traveled to London to meet with the British government. On July 1st, in 1867, with passage of the British North American Act, the Dominion of Canada was officially established as a self-governing entity within the British Empire. 2 years later, Canada acquired the vast possessions of the Hudson Bay Company, and within a decade, the provinces of Manitoba and Prince Edward Island had joined the Canadian Federation. In 1885, the Canadian Pacific Railway was completed, making mass settlement across the vast territory of Canada possible. On July 1st in 1979, the first Sony Walkman goes on sale. The transistor radio was a technological marvel that put music literally into consumers' hands in the mid-1950s. It was cheap, it was reliable, and it was portable, but it could never even approximate the sound quality of a record being played on a home stereo. It was, however, the only technology available to on-the-go music lovers until the Sony Corporation sparked a revolution in personal electronics with the introduction of the first personal stereo cassette player. The Sony Walkman didn't represent a breakthrough in technology so much as it did a breakthrough in imagination. Every element of the Walkman was already in production or testing as part of some other device when Sony's legendary chairman, Masaru Ibuka, made a special request in early 1979. Ibuka was a music lover who traveled frequently, and he was already in the habit of carrying one of his company's portable stereo tape recorders with him on international flights. But the Sony TC-D5 was a heavy device that was in no way portable by modern standards. So Ibuka asked his then deputy, Norio Oga, if he could cobble together something better. Working with the company's existing Pressman product, a portable monaural tape recorder that was popular with journalists, Oga had a playback-only stereo device rigged up in time for Ibuka's next Trans-Pacific flight. Even though this proto-Walkman required large, earmuff-like headphones and custom-made batteries, it impressed the Sony chairman tremendously with its sound quality and portability. Many objections were raised internally when Ibuka began his push to create a marketable version of the device, the biggest of which was conceptual. Would anyone actually buy a cassette device that was not for recording but only for playback? Ibuka's simple response, "Don't you think a stereo cassette player that you can listen to while walking around is a good idea?" proved to be one of the great understatements in business history. After a breakneck development phase of only 4 months, Sony engineers had a reliable product ready for market at 30,000 yen, which is approximately $150 in 1979, and available before the start of summer vacation for Japanese students, both critical targets established at the outset of development. The initial production run of 30,000 units looked to be too ambitious after 1 month of lackluster sales. Only 3,000 were sold in July 1979. But after an innovative consumer marketing campaign in which Sony representatives simply approached pedestrians on the streets of Tokyo and gave them a chance to listen to the Walkman, the product took off, selling out available stocks before the end of August and signaling the beginning of one of Sony's greatest success stories. At midnight on July 1st in 1997, Hong Kong reverted back to Chinese rule in a ceremony attended by British Prime Minister Tony Blair, Prince Charles of Wales, Chinese President Jiang Zemin, and U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. A few thousand Hong Kongers protested the turnover, which was otherwise celebratory and peaceful. In 1839, Britain invaded China to crush opposition to its interference in the country's economic, social, and political affairs. One of Britain's first acts of the war was to occupy Hong Kong, a sparsely inhabited island off the coast of southeast China. In 1841, China ceded the island to the British with the signing of the Convention of Chunpi. And in 1842, the Treaty of Nanking was signed, formally ending the First Opium War. Britain's new colony flourished as an east-west trading center and as the commercial gateway and distribution center for southern China. In 1898, Britain was granted an additional 99 years of rule over Hong Kong under the Second Convention of Peking. In September 1984, after years of negotiations, the British and Chinese signed a formal agreement approving the 1997 turnover of the island in exchange for a Chinese pledge to preserve Hong Kong's capitalist system. On July 1st, in 1997, Hong Kong was peaceably handed over to China in a ceremony attended by numerous Chinese, British, and international dignitaries. The chief executive under the new Hong Kong government, Tung Chee-hwa, formulated a policy based on the concept of one country, two systems, thus preserving Hong Kong's role as a principal capitalist center in Asia. On July 1st, in 2005, the last Ford Thunderbird was produced. The Ford factory in Wixom, Michigan, takes all the credit for producing the last one of the Ford T-Birds. An American great, Ford began its development of the Thunderbird in the years following World War II, during which American servicemen had the opportunity to observe sleek European sports cars. It should be noted that General Motors built the first American sports car, the Chevrolet Corvette, released in 1953. The undeniably sleek Corvette's initial engine performance was relatively underwhelming, but it was gaining lots of attention from the press and public, and Ford was motivated to respond, rushing the Thunderbird to the market in 1955. The 1955 Thunderbird was an immediate hit, selling more than 14,000 that year compared to just 700 Corvettes. The success of the Thunderbird led Chevrolet to continue production and improve upon the Corvette, which soon became a tough competitor in the sports car market. In addition to the powerful V8 engine that Ford was known for, the Thunderbird boasted all the conveniences consumers had become accustomed to, including a removable hard convertible top, soundproofing, and the accessory standard to most Ford cars. In 1958, to satisfy critics who thought the T-Bird was too small, Ford released a four-seater version with a roomier trunk and bucket seats. The Beach Boys elevated the Thunderbird to pop culture icon status in 1964 by including it in the lyrics of their hit single, Fun, Fun, Fun. She'll have fun, fun, fun till her daddy takes her T-Bird away. By that time, President John F. Kennedy had already included 50 T-Birds in his inaugural procession in 1961, and a T-Bird would also feature prominently in the 1973 film American Graffiti. Thunderbird sales slowed during the 1990s, and Ford discontinued the Thunderbird in 1997. In 2002, however, in an attempt to capitalize on car buyers' nostalgia, the company launched production of the Retro T-Bird, a two-seater convertible that took some of its styling from the original classic. The luxury retailer Neiman Marcus offered an early special edition version in their 2000 Christmas catalog, priced at just under $42,000. Their stock of 200 sold out in 2 hours and 15 minutes. Despite brisk early sales and good reviews, sales of the new T-Bird couldn't justify continued production, and Ford discontinued again, with the last T-Bird rolling off the production line in Wixom, Michigan on July 1st in 2005. All historic information documented on this audio file can be verified on History.com.